Welcome back to CRIME-ALYZE. Today I will reopen the case of Bryan Kohberger because of a sudden explosive legal U-turn that has completely upended what the public thought was a sealed case. In July of 2025, Bryan Kohberger stood before a packed Idaho courtroom. He looked a judge in the eye, and Bryan Kohberger formally pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. Bryan Kohberger did it to escape the executioner's needle. The deal seemed final: 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, permanently sealing Bryan Kohberger's fate behind bars. The legal reality appeared ironclad. The families of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin finally breathed a desperate sigh of relief, believing the nightmare of courtroom delays was over. But they underestimated the fractured mind of the PhD criminology candidate called Bryan Kohberger. From behind the concrete walls of his maximum security cell, Bryan Kohberger has just launched a desperate handwritten legal missile directly at the Idaho justice system. He's demanding a complete retraction of his guilty plea. Bryan Kohberger is claiming total, absolute, actual innocence. He wants his conviction completely erased, his life sentence thrown out, and a brand new full-scale capital murder trial. The internet has exploded with speculation. True crime forums are flooded with wild rumors. Is there a loophole for Bryan Kohberger? Did the police miss something? Today we're going to look past the hysterical social media headlines. We're going to conduct a ruthless fact-by-fact dissection of Kohberger's actual appellate motion. We're going to strip away the internet myths, and we're going to analyze the psychological pathology which is driving this dangerous legal gamble of Bryan Kohberger. Let's smash the biggest rumor immediately. For weeks, online commentators have claimed that Kohberger has a definitive ticket to freedom, a mysterious single strand of hair that proves someone else was in that house. The true crime community has latched onto this, claiming clumps of unknown hair were discovered inside the King Road home, clutched in the hands of 20-year-old victim Ethan Chapin. In his handwritten petition for post-conviction relief, Bryan Kohberger explicitly weaponizes this rumor, citing a true crime book titled Broken Plea to argue that his defense team ignored alternative suspect evidence. But what is the forensic truth? The official FBI laboratory forensics completely dismantled this fantasy. The prosecution's records show that what online theorists call clumps of hair was actually microscopic debris. More importantly, independent, high-velocity DNA testing confirmed the hair fragments belonged to Ethan Chapin himself. There was no mysterious alternative killer leaving biological traces at the scene. Yet Bryan Kohberger is using this misconstrued forensic detail to scream ineffective counsel. Why? Because a mind built on academic hubris cannot accept defeat. Bryan Kohberger isn't fighting a legal battle based on reality. He is trying to rewrite the narrative to feed his own ego. Inside the motion which Bryan Kohberger filed, to understand what's happening right now, we have to look directly at the legal mechanics of a post-conviction petition. When a defendant pleads guilty in a court of law, they undergo a rigorous process called an elocution. The judge asks them directly, are you pleading guilty because you are in fact guilty? The judge asks them this directly. The defendant answers under oath. Undoing that statement is one of the steepest, most statistically impossible hills in the American legal system. To win a retraction, Kohberger cannot just say, I changed my mind. He has to prove what is known as ineffective assistance of counsel. He has to convince the judge that his high-profile, state-funded defense team, led by Ann Taylor, completely failed him, coerced him, and violated his constitutional rights. Let's break down the three actual arguments Kohberger has laid out in his handwritten motion. First, he claims his defense team orchestrated a calculated death row scare. Bryan Kohberger alleges that Ann Taylor and her co-counsel did not calmly advise him on his options. Instead, he claims they sat in his consultation cell and fabricated terrifying, visceral, horrific stories about the psychological torture of Idaho's death row conditions. Bryan Kohberger claims his lawyers painted a picture of absolute isolation and impending doom, deliberately panicking both him and his parents. According to Kohberger, he was placed under such extreme, relentless, psychological duress by his own legal team that his mind shattered, forcing him into a false confession just to stop the terror. Second, he argues his legal team engaged in the deliberate withholding of exculpatory evidence. He claims that during the critical weeks leading up to the July 2025 plea deal, his lawyers possessed crucial forensic data that could have helped establish his innocence. He alleges they intentionally hid these files from him, keeping him in the dark about weaknesses in the state's case, so he would feel entirely hopeless and sign the plea agreement. Third, he makes the astonishing claim of false promises of prison luxury. In his motion, Bryan Kohberger asserts that his defense team explicitly promised him that if he pled guilty, they had negotiated backdoor privileges with the Department of Corrections. He claims he was promised immediate physical contact visits with his family, complete freedom of movement within a progressive facility, and immediate prison employment tailored to his academic background. Now that he is locked in a maximum security cell in the standard rigid restrictions, he claims the state breached its contract, rendering his plea invalid. Look closely at these arguments. Notice a pattern. He is completely deflecting accountability. In his mind, he didn't fail. His lawyers failed him. This aligns perfectly with the psychological profile we built in our first deep dive. A person with huge narcissistic and Machiavellian traits cannot accept that they made a mistake, let alone that they left their own DNA at a catastrophic crime scene. If he is in prison, it must be because he was out-manipulated by his own attorneys. Fact versus internet fiction. As this appeal moves forward, it has reawakened a toxic flood of original trial rumors that need to be aggressively fact-checked. For years, true crime channels have pushed a definitive motive that Bryan Kohberger targeted the King Road house because of a direct, real-world romantic rejection. The narrative goes like this. Kohberger allegedly met Madison Mogen in town. He approached her, made aggressive romantic advances, and she forcefully rejected him. Humiliated and seeking blood revenge, Bryan Kohberger allegedly tracked her to her home and made her his primary target. Let's separate internet fiction from forensic fact. This entire town rejection story did not come from police files, cell phone data, or witness statements. It originated entirely from a traumatized friend's recurring nightmare. Following the tragedy, a close associate of victims named Emily Alland explained to authors that because nobody in their social circle recognized Kohberger's face after his arrest, her own mind struggled to find a reason. Her best guess, which manifested as a recurring nightmare, was that he must have tried to talk to Madison at a local business, gotten brushed off, and retaliated. The internet took a traumatized girl's nightmare and reported it as a hard investigative fact. Then came the rumor of the Mad Greek restaurant, the local establishment where both Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle worked. Speculation ran wild that Kohberger stalked them while sitting at their tables. But the restaurant's owner, Jackie Fisher, stepped forward and completely denied this, stating on the record that reports of Bryan Kohberger dining there or interacting with the staff were completely fabricated. If it wasn't a specific real-world rejection by Madison Mogen, what does the evidence actually show? It shows a much darker, detached pattern of generalized surveillance. Skye Borgman, the director behind the major Netflix documentary series The Idaho Murders, A College Nightmare, pointed out a chilling conclusion shared by investigators. Bryan Kohberger likely didn't target a specific person, first because of an insult. He targeted the King Roadhouse itself. He chose a chaotic, high-activity, off-campus home filled with multiple popular, attractive college students, the exact lifestyle of social acceptance and peer connection that his own history of severe childhood bullying and isolation had completely locked him out of. Digital forensics proved he didn't need to meet them in town. He followed Madison, Kaylee, and Xana on Instagram, obsessing over their digital lives. Cell phone tower records proved his phone pinged near that specific neighborhood at least 12 times late at night in the months leading up to November the 13th. He was an insomniac, ghost lurking in their peripheral vision, driven by a deep-seated systematic resentment toward an entire demographic rather than a single interaction at a restaurant in town. And what about his defense against that tracking data or the geofencing data that puts his vehicle on that exact route? In his current appeal, Bryan Kohberger offers no answers. His previous defense team tried to claim he was simply a man who liked to drive around late at night to look at the stars. Legal experts familiar with the unsealed portions of that file know that the prosecution's geofencing is an absolute fortress. Yet Kohberger's motion glosses over the phone records entirely, focusing instead on attacking the integrity of his own legal representation. The psychological laboratory. This brings us back to the core psychological theory we established in our initial profile, academic hubris. Remember who Bryan Kohberger is. He is not a standard impulsive street criminal. He was a master's degree graduate who transitioned into a highly competitive PhD program studying the deepest mechanics of criminal justice, digital forensics, and police behavior. He studied under world-renowned forensic psychologists. Months before the murders, he conducted a clinical data collection survey on Reddit, asking ex-convicts detailed, intimate questions about how they managed their emotions and took precautions before entering a target home. When an individual with dark tetra traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy attains high academic expertise, it frequently breeds a dangerous God complex. Kohberger genuinely believed he was intellectually superior to everyday law enforcement officers. He believed he could turn criminal theory into a real-world experiment to commit the perfect crime. But real-world crime scenes are not sterile textbooks. When his meticulous plan met the visceral, unpredictable chaos of that off-campus home, panic set in. In his haste, he made a catastrophic amateur mistake. He left behind a leather knife sheath on Madison Mogen's bed, containing a single source of his touch DNA on the metal snap button. His academic fantasy was instantly shattered by his own real-world carelessness. Now look at his behavior today through that exact psychological lens. He's currently experiencing the total collapse of his ego inside a maximum security prison. He realized that by pleading guilty, he stripped himself of his own stage. He silenced his own voice. For a narcissist, being forgotten in a concrete box is a fate worse than death. This handwritten petition is not a logical legal strategy. It is a manifestation of his academic hubris reasserting itself. Bryan Kohberger has dismissed his elite, highly experienced capital defense lawyers. In their place, the court has just appointed a local public defender out of Moscow, Idaho, named Greg Rauch, to manage this long-shot post-conviction challenge. Bryan Kohberger wants to be back in control. He wants to treat the Idaho appellate court as his next psychological laboratory. He believes that with his understanding of criminal law, he can manipulate the appellate system, outminer his new public defender, expose his old lawyers, and somehow outsmart the entire justice apparatus. That ensnared him. He's gambling his life away because his psychology fundamentally prevents him from admitting that he lost the game. The legacy of Bryan Kohberger. But while Bryan Kohberger plays chess with handwritten motions from his cell, the real world has responded with fierce, unyielding clarity. The Goncalves family recently released a scathing public statement cutting through his legal maneuvers and labeling him a mosquito you just can't seem to swat. They are forcing the public to look past his academic mask and remember the visceral reality of what occurred on November 13, 2022. The ultimate tragedy of forensic psychology is that the truth of this case is likely a toxic, compounding mixture of everything we have analyzed. His childhood trauma created a foundation of deep-seated resentment. I analyzed that in a video that I published a few days ago here on this channel. You can watch that video. His academic studies gave him the dangerous tools to conceptualize an atrocity, and his severe neurological struggles, chronic insomnia, and history of substance abuse acted as the final chemical trigger that pushed him over the edge into irreversible action. When the judge handed down those consecutive life sentences, he branded Bryan Kohberger a faceless coward. The justice system ensured that his legacy would never be one of intellectual brilliance or an outsmarted system. It will forever be one of absolute senseless human devastation, leaving an indelible scar on the community of Moscow, Idaho, and on the families left behind. Kohberger can file all the motions he wants. He can rewrite his history, blame his attorneys, and chase internet rumors about hair forensics. But the legal reality remains sealed. The mask has been permanently stripped away. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive investigation here on CRIME-ALYZE. I would like to hear from you in the comments below. Do you believe Bryan Kohberger's sudden appeal is a calculated legal strategy, or is it just the final desperate gasp of an arrogant academic who cannot accept his own defeat? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would like to hear your opinion about this question that I just gave you. I read every single comment. I would like to hear from you. Please click the subscribe button below, turn on your notifications, and stay close to this channel as we track every single update in this breaking legal saga with Bryan Kohberger.